Hey everyone, today we're checking out the best champions for solo queue, but this is basically going to be the meta now until the end of the season. Like, they're not likely going to change too much, so you can just grind the games out, get the next tier, and if something is good now, it's probably going to be good until preseason. There's a list, there's timestamps down in the description, but we're going to start with AD carry, and the first one we're going to talk about is Kha'Zix, which is still the most popular AD carry, even after the nerfs. Her win rate might not look the best, but she's actually really good still. Stormrazor and Rage Raid is so good for solo queue, it gives you a lot of early to mid game damage to keep up with other AD carries that are also going to be strong at that point. You have a bit more burst, and you don't have to rely on stacking your Rage Raid for all of your damage. Stormrazor applies a lot anyway. You can fight in the lane phase, especially with your passive. If you hit your W, you're probably going to win that trade actually, and if she gets fed, it's really dangerous because she is just so good later, and she scales so well into the game, so getting items faster is really dangerous. There is a little trick actually to upgrading your Q earlier, so your missiles earlier, if you start with the Doran's Blade. I know most people go shield or ring, but the blade gives you an extra bit of AD, so combined with the Stormrazor and the pickaxe from Rage Raid, you instantly upgrade your Q. It's a good burst of damage. We did this last time and you thought it's pretty cool, so we're going to talk about how to counter these champions as well, just a little bit about how to beat her really. So it's easiest to stomp a Kai'Sa in the lane phase, so champions like Misfortune, Draven, Lucian are really good against her, but also just burst in general. Like, you want to nuke her down before she stacks up her Rage Raid, because that is when she's at her most powerful. Misfortune is the easiest and the strongest AD at the moment by a mile. Like, she's pretty simple, you press R, you auto attack, and that's pretty much it. She's got very strong laning, she can bully, she can poke from range, chunk with those Q bounces like massively, especially when you get lethality or a Dust Blade, and she's very hard to play against, which can be really frustrating. Even though she is so good in the lane phase, she actually scales decently well throughout the game as well, especially with Dark Harvest. Your ultimate can be game changing if it hits the entire enemy team. It does a lot of damage, and you've stacked arm penetration the entire game. Dark Harvest with Love Tap is insane damage in a team fight though. This is why she's so good late game. Like, if you get a kill, right, you reset the Dark Harvest stack, you pick up the soul, you get the Love Tap as well on the next person, you chunk them for like half their health. It's giving her damage outside of her ultimate really. So if you want to beat her, she can't really deal with spread out fights without a good chance to ultimate. That lowers her damage by a ton already, and she also can't duel people well if she can't burst them down either. So any crowd control or tank to dive on her face, she will really struggle against. Lucian is still probably the best overall AD. He's so good after his buffs. He stomps lane really easily. It's difficult to lock him down. He's got a really good mid game. Jhin can set up a lot of fights right now. He's a good playmaker. He scales well with the crit build, and he can pump out some really big damage. Twitch is like the best late game champion. Just highest DPS. You just scale up in the game. You can stealth and roam if you want to. If not, you wait for late game, press R, it does the job for you. Vayne is a lot better right now though, and she's going to be the one I mentioned at the end of this section. Her build is in a really good spot at the moment. Her laning is a little bit better now after the buffs. You have a lower Q cooldown, lower tumble. Your late game is just so good though. I guess as always with Vayne, right? But you have the stealth, you have amazing kiting. It's very hard to shut her down, but you always pump out really good damage. Her build is not glass cannon anymore though, and this is the biggest thing for me, honestly. It's easier to play her well. You don't have to play her perfectly. If you make a mistake, it's not going to be the end of you. Like, you're not going to instantly die. You still have very high damage, but you have like a lot more lifesteal and stuff. Moving into the mid lane, there are loads of different choices you can pick for mid laners, but one I want to start with is Veigar, but it's this specific slow build that works on a lot of different champions. It's not just Veigar, but it works really well with him. It's Glacial Augment and then GLP or Twin Shadows. The active shoots out a ray, slowing everybody around for a ton, so it's much easier to hit your skill shots. For Veigar, it means hitting your W without stun is a lot easier, and that is a ton of damage, like it's massive damage, but it's also very hard to miss your cage when they are slowed that much. You still have really good damage, especially with Veigar. You still scale, and a lot of damage is from your stacks anyway, which is great. It's just an easier way to use the damage that you have, and as I said, it works on a lot of different mid laners for the same reason. The best way to beat a Veigar though is to smash him early game really. So Fizz, for example, you farm him with your ultimate, or even Katarina gets a free lane and then can burst him down pretty easily. But if you can't do that, you just have to have some big crowd control, lock him in place so he can't do any damage. The other one for the mid laner is Akali. She is just so good at the moment. Her damage is crazy high, but she can just outplay everybody at the same time. She is much better as a champion on a good player who has like a kind of an idea of what to do and how to combo, because there are so many different ways to kill somebody. Getting fed makes the game very easy on Akali. I'm not sure any assassin can do better with a lead really, especially since she can't be seen with the obscure, right? So you have a good way to protect yourself. The best counter to Akali is kind of like champion picks really. So AoE damage, like pick Veigar. No joke, Cage like traps her in her shroud. It's really good. He can AoE her down and burst her when she's out of that. That is a really good counter, but like Lissandra is a really good choice as well, and Malz basically crowd control. well. Lock it down when she's outside of stealth and she's not that bad. Kassadin scales amazingly well at the moment. If you don't shut him down early, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, but it's very hard for mages to actually do that, and if you don't get a gank, then you're kind of screwed. Leblanc is still worth a ban in my opinion. A good one that can destroy a game. It's like a true 1v9 champion when played well. It's really hard to stop her. Ahri, on the other hand, is like the most solid, well-rounded mid laner. She can make mistakes, but you just won't die for them, which is great. You can bridge the gap between like a mage and an assassin, doing both pretty well. The honorable mention is going to be Malz for today, though. He got some buffs with the Liandry's buff, which basically makes it burn for a lot more damage now. He just has to press R though and press E, and the burn does a lot more damage on its own, so it's not very hard to use it, if that makes sense. You play the same as you were before. You counter a lot of meta champions at the moment with his ultimate, especially assassins like Akali, are really good in team fights to have, pretty safe with his shield. You can't go wrong with Malz, and he just got a lot better. The jungle is actually pretty open right now. There are a lot of good champions that you can pick, but at the top is really like Graves and Evelynn. Like those two are kind of their own tier on their own. And then after that, we have quite a few like Kha'Zix. So we had a few buffs this patch, right? The W thing is nice, slows for more basically, but it's really the passive AD ratio doubling that has made him a lot better. He scales really, really well into the game now. He's a proper jungle assassin who always has a chance to kill somebody, no matter what time in the game it is. You stealth around, you have your Duskblade procs, your passive damage that was buffed. Remember, Dark Harvest now as well that everybody runs. That is a real threat for these fights, especially later. As with any assassin, if you do want to beat someone like that, crowd control is a really, really good start. You lock him in place, you burn them down, or you can just burst him down first and catch him, I guess. Like grouping together also makes it a lot harder for him to nab a kill and get out alive. So if there's a fed Kha'Zix, just group together and hope for the best. Xin Zhao is the opposite of that one really though. He is the early game monster right now. You pick him to win early game. The longer you go in the game, the harder it's going to get to kill somebody before your ultimate runs out, and that is really what you play around basically and what makes him so good. It's mostly just how hard you can snowball though if you do get a few kills. If you get the lead, right, you're so deadly and there's not much people can do. People have to get in range of the ultimate circle to try and kill you, but anyone in there probably dies first. There are two ways to beat Xin really, so you can either scale and you can just like wait, or you can dive on top of him in the circle and just nuke him down. Someone who actually wants to get kind of close, I guess. But to be honest, the best way is to catch him, make him blow his ultimate cooldown, run away, and then turn around and kill him afterwards. Evelynn, as I said, is still such a stupid champion, honestly. It's very hard to play against her when she could be anywhere with her stealth, but just has the most gross one-shot combo that has like very, very little counterplay. Graves is still insane on a good player. Best jungler by far in my opinion. Amazing damage, hard to kill, and he farms like a beast. He'll probably have more CS than your laners. Kayn is great red or blue, but assassin, the blue form, is what I see more of at the moment. Like hitting your W and auto attack basically kills any carry champion. So Taliyah is the one I think fell off the radar a little bit, but is still very, very strong, especially mid game. Her damage output is over time with her shards, with her Q, and burst at the start with her flip. Not something that many champions have, like a good balance of both. She clears well in the jungle. Her ganks are amazing with her wall. She can really control a game, but I always see the wall behind bot lane and then nab kills over and over, and it always seems to work. So with the support role, I want to try something just a tiny bit different. Let me know if you like this or not, but I looked around silver and gold, and Brand is the best support at the moment, even if he isn't at like platinum and diamond. It makes sense, right? He's got an oppressive lane. He's very hard to play against. He's got crazy damage, and he hard punishes mistakes really. If you walk too far forward, you're stunned into your combo and probably dead. And almost always you're going to lose CS or die in the lane phase against him. With that lead, you're going to have a ton of mid-game damage as well, almost having like a second mid laner really, and it's not that weird to top the damage charts on this guy. Plus, we had a Liandry's buff this patch, which means more burn damage. The best counter to Brand is to crowd control and blow him up in the lane phase. Brand is immobile, and that is his biggest weakness, really. If you don't fight him, you pretty much lose, and this is why he's so good, actually. You need some sort of engage and follow-up damage, but that's why it's hard in solo queue, because your support or your AD tends to probably be a bit passive against him. Pyke was also directly buffed this patch, and definitely didn't need it at all. His lane phase is even stronger now. He's one of the best choices up until about the 20-minute mark. That's when his buffs are in full effect, and you can execute for more, getting more kills and using your raw damage. After that, you swap to being more of a pain in the ass really. You duck in and out of fights, you heal for a bunch, and you just refuse to die while having quite a lot of crowd control. This is why the tank build has come back again really. You pick him to demolish the lane phase, which he can do all the time, but the item build makes you have an even better team fight. So to beat him, to counter him, you really want to deny his engage. Think like a Nami bubble on top of him when he uses E, or like a Janna Q to disengage or something like that. Then he doesn't really have much left. Or you can go aggressive instead and kill him before he runs off to heal. That would definitely definitely works as well. Nami is still great. She can bully almost any single lane, especially melee champions can be oppressive to play against with the healing and the poke and the damage that she puts out. Thresh was buffed as well this patch and is probably the best overall support there is. He can find kills way more and set things up the entire game. Alistar is a really good frontline and engaged champion. Strong lane when paired with anything like Misfortune or Lucian that are pretty common now, so he's almost always going to win lane. Janna is the last one I want to mention. She was given more damage from her passive now, so auto harass hits a bit harder, and she definitely went up a bit in win rate. She probably won't become like top tier or anything just yet, but if for some reason you enjoy playing Janna, then you definitely can now. Maxing W with these buffs, by the way, also works very well. Not as common, but the damage you can put out with that, with the autos and with your W, makes her a lot more viable with how the game is played now. Okay, so let's move into the top lane, and I swear, Urgot got even better when they figured out the flash sphere engage thing that you can do. You might have seen it at Worlds, but basically when you have someone trapped on your ultimate and you're putting them towards you to execute them, you can flash into the middle of the enemy team and fit everybody around you. It might seem pretty obvious, and maybe you were doing this already, but it seems like every Urgot in solo queue has discovered this now, and it's very hard to play against. It's such a good way to clean up fights. You're still going to be abusing Time Up Tonic and Corrupting Potion, so you basically never lose lane. He's tanky, he has a ton of damage, and his ultimate is like a ranged Cho'Gath ult. So to counter him, either you can out-tank him, think maybe like a Sion or a Maokai or something, or you can just try and outscale and ignore him like a Jackson or Irelia. Like trying to smash him in the lane phase though doesn't really work, to be honest. So that's one thing you don't want to do. Darius is another really good lane champion, one of the best top laners now for solo queue after the buffs to his W and his E, basically giving his lane phase even more damage. There are two main builds, so the Cleaver and Tank version or the Trinity and Sterix damage version. Damage wins way more right now, taking Ghost and Flash as your summoners as well. The Trinity does make you easier to kill, but you nuke people down even without your ultimate. He was already really good in the lane phase. That's why I don't understand these buffs. Now he's been buffed with that, he just gets ahead even more in games and becomes a bigger problem than he was before. There's actually a very easy way to counter Darius, and that is if you can poke him from range. You'll smash him, like anything from Heimerdinger to Quinn or like Temu or Pantheon, like that, or you just outscale like a Jax or an Irelia. Speaking of Irelia, she is still broken. Ban this champion, trust me, a good one will be a problem every single game. They always find ways to pull damage out of their arse. Jax scales like a machine, so if he gets a kill early, you know it's going to be a very hard game. Sion is like the best tank out there right now. Stacks more health after his buffs, absorbs a lot of time and damage during fights, and has this amazing engage for fights. So that is going to wrap up what the meta probably looks like until the end of the season now. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching until the very end if you're still here, but for now, I'll leave you with the rope.